Alright, so this video is looking at learners with exceptionalities. Right? So that can kind of go one of two ways. These might be learners or students that we're going to have in our class that have gifts and talents or higher levels of intelligence, and so they're kind of exceptional in that way. But then we also look at the exceptions where maybe this is a student who is struggling or experiences some type of disability. Right? So we're kind of looking at the wide range there. One of the kind of first things to look at here is with intelligence. Right? So we have the traditional view of intelligence where, here is the person's IQ score, and we want to see how that relates to how, quote unquote, smart they may be. The thing to know about that is that it's a comparison score. It's how, quote unquote, smart someone is compared to people their age. Like, so are they performing at a level higher than what would be expected, lower than what would be expected? Generally speaking, IQ scores are broken down on a normal distribution. So here in the middle, we'll have the average IQ score of 100. And then from there, anything kind of below 100 is going to be lower than that, and anything higher, it's just where you start to get people who are more gifted and talented. What it's going to do, though, is that it's going to fall within a range. Right? So anything between 70 and 130, it's considered like average, if you will. I mean, it's deviating from the 100 that's in the middle, but it's still within 2 standard deviations. Anything less than 70, someone's considered to have an intellectual disability, and anything higher than 130, someone's considered to be like approaching genius level. What we're going to see is that for 95% of all people, they're going to be between 70 and 130, with the average being right there in 100. Okay. However, that takes the very traditional view of intelligence. There are other models out there. My favorite of these is from Howard Gardner, and he has that theory of multiple intelligences. Right? There's more than one way to be gifted or talented. There's more than one way to be smart. All right, so some people, they're good at that logical, mathematical, or verbal linguistic type stuff, your traditional kind of things. But what about your musicians? What about your athletes and people who are good with their hands? What about your artists? What about the people who are really good at just knowing how to interact with other people and help other people? We want to make sure they're also being kind of represented. Right? So that's a kind of a completely different approach to intelligence. Now, that's important for us to consider because when we look at the capabilities of each of our students, there are different ideas as far as ability grouping. Right? So how does this happen? Like, so if we have gifted and talented students, like, do we have a separate class for them? How is that handled? How do you qualify to get into that program? Like, what are the characteristics that we're looking for? How is those characteristics identified? Is it just testing? Is it recommendations of teachers? Is it a little bit of both? Once you're in, are you in? Are you able to be added later on? These are things for us to consider. And kind of on the opposite, what if we identify a student who is struggling or maybe needs a little bit more attention? Is there a process in place to identify those things and make sure they're also getting the proper amount of support that they need? Right? So when we look at just exceptionalities and from an intelligence standpoint, there are things we want to consider and how we identify those things and what would be the most appropriate way to handle programs or support services for those students. The other part that we can look at with learners with exceptionalities comes with students that have any kind of disabilities. Right now, there's a wide range of things here. So there are learning disabilities that we have seen. That could be something as simple as dyslexia. Right? There are communication disorders where maybe there's difficulty processing information that's given to them, or maybe there's difficulty kind of properly communicating the way they would want to. It could even be something like autism spectrum disorder. So if someone's on that autism spectrum, how might that impact their learning process? Intellectual disabilities. So again, any IQ lower than 70. Those individuals might have difficulty in a regular classroom, but do we want to mainstream them or should they be separate? It might depend on the actual individual themselves and how they are. We can look at even emotional behavioral disorders, how that might impact someone and their learning ability. And then we also have a lot of students have physical or sensory challenges, right? So if someone's in a wheelchair, if someone is deaf, or someone is blind, like what accommodations do we need in our teaching process, or even just in the physical classroom that might be able to accommodate that? So just kind of a new-ish trend that's been around for a while, but it's getting more and more popular, is something called Universal Design for Learning. So UDL, Universal Design for Learning. And what it's saying is that if we kind of imagine how our classrooms can be set up, the whole teaching process, what are some things that we need to do to make sure we are taking into consideration the accommodations that are needed for someone who has a disability or other type of exceptionality, right? So an example might be if you're teaching just an online class and you're preparing your materials and you're going to have a picture on there. Well, someone who's blind cannot see that picture, all right? So can you add a text description to the picture? Or, if there's a lot of visuals, having those things is just being mindful, right? So if they have a text reader that can help them know what's being said, the way we do links, the way we do pictures, all those things can affect that screen reader for them. And there's ways that we can do it effectively, so it's really beneficial for them. And so what Universal Design for Learning is saying is that if we can do that from the beginning, plan from the beginning how to provide those accommodations, not only is it going to help those particular students who need it, but it's just going to help everybody. All right, so it's a good practice to go ahead and plan from that from the beginning and just have that in place. All right, so it is something to consider, right? So when we have learners with exceptionalities, how do we identify those? What are the proper support services in place, even if it's something like an IEP, right? So this is an individualized education plan. So these are specific things that are being done to accommodate that student. What the student's going to do, what we're going to do, what the parents are going to do, what the school's going to do, like all these different pieces of the puzzle, just to make sure that every student has the same opportunity for success when it comes to their learning.